Welcome back. This session is with Deb Calvert. She authored Discover Questions and Stop Selling and Start Leading, is the president of People First Productivity Solutions, and is the founder of People First Leadership Academy. Deb is a certified master of the Leadership Challenge and a certified sales and executive coach. She has been named one of the 65 most influential women in business, a top 30 global sales guru, and an inductee into the Sales Hall of Fame. The following session was recorded earlier.
Thank you, Subhanjan. I am really honored to be with you here. As always, you have recognized a need and you're meeting the need with the Sales and Marketing Lit Fest 2023. I love that you're bringing together authors and readers in the sales and marketing space worldwide. So thank you very much for including me. I am going to be announcing something to the folks who are part of the Lit Fest. Something that hasn't been officially announced anywhere else before. But before I do that, let me give you just a little bit of background. I will be talking here about Discover Questions. Discover Questions Get You Connected was released in 2013. It has received so many accolades and awards. I'm just really honored by the response that there has been to this whole body of research about asking questions in ways that get buyers and sellers connected. HubSpot, in their first list of the top 20 sales books, most highly rated sales books of all time, they included this book. And at that time, it was the only book by a female author and the only book by a self-published author, alongside names like Zig Ziglar and some of the greats. And so I've been just thrilled to ride this wave over the past 10 years and to bring Discover Questions to so many people. But things have changed. That research that we conducted back in 2011, 2012, 2013, before we published, well, much of it is relevant, but things have changed, and there are new circumstances and new trends and buyer needs that need to be addressed. And that's why we are going to be bringing out in September of 2023 the 10th anniversary edition of Discover Questions. And what I would like to share here with you today are some of the changes that you can anticipate seeing in this all new, completely updated edition, all new stories, all new examples, all new types of research to help sellers do a better job of always connecting human to human with buyers. I'll give a little background along the way. We'll do a contrast, 2013, 2023, what's different and what's being addressed here. But for those who are not familiar with Discover Questions, the premise is this. We talk to buyers in an extensive body of research, and we talk to sellers, both before they learned how to ask quality questions and the constructs of what makes a good question and the 8 purposes for asking questions. We interviewed those sellers and we interviewed their buyers before the sellers went through some training and were able to use 8 types of questions, and then after. And the contrasts were dramatic when sellers use Discover Questions. That's an acronym for the 8 purposes of asking questions. When sellers know how to mix this up to use more than just the data, outcome, and consequence questions that are so widely understood and widely used in selling, but when they mix it up, especially by asking some value and solution and example questions, well, that's where sales accelerate and buyers feel completely different about the sellers that they're doing business with. So this has really taken off, and people around the world, we've had a small army of trainers teaching people about Discover Questions. And this model is still absolutely essential, and it's accurate. We haven't found a 9th purpose for asking questions. I joke about that because for the longest time, I thought there's got to be something else out there. And I was perfectly happy to change the acronym into Discovery if we needed to do that. But in all these years, we haven't found a 9th purpose. So Discover has been validated over and over again. The end result of asking quality questions is that buyers say this person, this is the seller I look forward to working with. This is the one that I actually want to do business with. And we don't want to change anything there. But we do know that there are some new mega trends. In 2013, we covered the mega trends in selling at that time. So much has changed, though, that these trends are different. What we're seeing with buyers today, what we're seeing in the world of selling demands different responses because of what's happening. So the first of these, the first thing that you have to consider is that sellers have been and need to continue being the value creators, not the value deliverers from your product, not the value adders because you plussed up something or you gave some great discount, but the creators of value, like poof, in an instant, right then when you're talking with your buyer, that the conversation itself is creating real lasting value. But not only that, buyers have become demanding. Buyers are expecting sellers to show up as leaders. Now, this was a separate body of research, and it shows up in the book that I wrote with Jim Kouzes and Barry Posner in 2017. That book is called Stop Selling and Start Leading. And it talks about the very specific behaviors that cause buyers to respond more favorably to sellers. Certainly asking questions, discover questions fall within a few of those behaviors, but there are other behaviors too that sellers ought to know about so that they can be a leader in those conversations with buyers. The third big trend that we're seeing, it's undeniable, is that sellers need to be good critical thinkers. Being a good critical thinker helps you to overcome objections. It helps you to show things to your buyers that they might be missing and to help them understand the importance of seeing things in a new way and of understanding those. And the fourth of these mega trends, well, this is complementary to being a critical thinker, and that is that sellers need to be sense makers. And if you're hearing that word, sense maker for the first time, I strongly encourage you to go and take a look at the Gartner research around this. Sense making, it's just what it sounds like. A seller who can help make sense out of all the choices and the options and the risks of inaction. A seller who can help a buyer make sense of all that has a distinct advantage over one who's pushing and generically trying to sell something. Being a sense maker is how you cut through information overload, because we're all grappling with that. Buyers are no different. Information overload or infobesity is at epidemic levels, and the person who can create value in an instant by helping make sense of the questions and the unanswered questions, especially that a buyer might have, well, that's the seller who stands out. That's true, meaningful differentiation. So we are going to address those mega trends in the 10th anniversary edition of Discover Questions, Get You Connected. But we're also going to take a look at the new competencies that sellers need. And some of these have been emerging. They won't sound entirely new to you. But more than ever, it's time to turn up the volume and to really showcase these skills if you've got them. And if you don't, no more duck, dodge, deny. It's time to get busy, double down, and go develop these skills. The first is to be able to listen. Not just passively, not even actively, but with empathy. To listen with your heart, not just your brain or your ears. And to be able to respond human to human to the emotion that buyers are expressing in addition to the content of whatever it is that they're trying to tell you. Sellers also need to develop learning agility, which will help you to be a better critical thinker and sense maker. Learning agility, that just means being able to cross-apply something you learned in one situation, and now you can use it in a similar but not identical sort of a situation. These two competencies are not unique to selling. They are considered to be compensator competencies, meaning If you will develop these two competencies, they will compensate for whatever competencies you don't have, at least for a little while. People will give you grace. They'll indulge a little extra time with you if they can see that you are agile as a learner and genuinely really listening to them. Sellers also need to remain open, to become more curious, to truly operate as investigators, not just to the point where you get a little opening that you can pounce on, but curious and open to learn and to understand so that you really can empathize with your buyer and help them make sense of all those options that they have. Sense making all by itself is a competency. And I won't go into great detail here. Like I said, you can look at that Gartner research, but we'll also be covering this in the 10th anniversary edition of Discover Questions, Get You Connected. It's a higher level skill that involves being able to discern which information is relevant, which information is something that, although it's contrary to what you have already thought, you are going to take a deeper look at it anyway, because you don't want to just be operating with a confirmation bias, selecting out only that information that sort of proves your point, but that you can look at all the angles and be very discerning and very efficient in the way that you process and utilize information. And sellers need to be leaders. You need leadership competencies. There's no mistake about it. In that book, Stop Selling and Start Leading, we interviewed in panel studies 530 B2B buyers. And we asked them, what would cause you to be more likely to take a meeting with a seller? And what would cause you to be more likely to choose to do business with a certain seller? And buyers were very, very clear about this. The behaviors that they favor, the ones they want to see more frequently from the sellers they choose to do business with, are all the very same competencies that make leaders effective. So this too is increasingly important as we cut through and seek to differentiate ourselves and to truly help our buyers. Now, this is what's driving all this change. Some of this you'll know, of course, but the world around us is changing so rapidly. Technology, AI, you can barely keep up, and buyers are experiencing it in every part of their lives. You might be a B2B seller, but your buyer is also a consumer. And so they're getting sort of spoiled by all the things that are going on in the other places as consumers that they do business. And they expect, no, in fact, they demand that you're keeping pace. And they're expecting that you meet them where they are and support them in ways that make their lives easier, make their job more efficient, clearer, faster. And technology becomes a big piece of that. Well, that's one of the change drivers. There's also the fact that we are living in a VUCA world. We've been there for a while. VUCA means that the world around us, everything around us, is volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex, and it's ambiguous. But that term is now being supplemented. You know, we all love acronyms, but it's also a BANI world. And this is about our emotional state, our reaction to the VUCA world, especially post-pandemic. That acronym, BANI, that stands for the fact that people are brittle. The littlest thing, it seems, can cause us to crumble at any time. But it's really just this sense of overload that's causing that fragility. And not only are people brittle, but they're anxious. Right? They have a sense of urgency, oftentimes misplaced, but it interferes with quality decision making. Not only that, but things around us are nonlinear. So at the very same time that we're brittle and anxious, the decisions that we make, the information that we get, the events that we connect the dots between, they don't always happen and come around in a logical fashion. This makes making a commitment very difficult. especially anything that involves long-term planning, because we'd have all that uncertainty and that ambiguity and this impact of everything being non-linear for us. And last but not least, not only are things complex and ambiguous, but the I in BANI stands for incomprehensible. Things don't make sense. Answers to questions that we ask often don't make sense. We gloss over them sort of as a coping mechanism, and we leave them that way, uncomprehended, incomprehensible, and hanging over our head as something that causes even more anxiety. This is the state of the world that we live in. You've probably experienced it too. But to help your buyers make decisions, to help them have clarity, we've got to be able to support them, even though they're having this BANI experience in a VUCA world. There's also certainly change being driven by the economy. All of this economic uncertainty and the impact on people's personal pocketbooks, well, that causes reservations. It causes more delays and stall outs in the sales process. It causes even more need for you to give your buyer a sense of confidence in working with you. And last but not least, certainly not a new one, probably ageless, but although we have no more or less time than we ever did before, what we now have are even more distractions and options about ways to use our time. And it feels like those options are infinite, only magnifying then our sense of confusion, our lack of commitment, our struggle to make sense of it all. And this is what your buyers are experiencing. Here's the good news. There is one skill, and only one that I know of, one skill that can check all the boxes to help you navigate in a VUCA world, to help you support your clients who are in that place of BANI where they're brittle and they're anxious and they're experiencing this nonlinear, incomprehensible sort of response. A way that you can create value in an instant, a way that you can be a really strong critical thinker and sense maker, a way that you can develop those competencies and showcase those competencies of empathetic listening and of agile learning. One thing that covers all those bases. And to me, that says that this one thing is very, very important. It ought to be the top priority, not just for any seller, but for anyone at all who wants to connect with people and form relationships that are founded in trust. And that one thing, above all other things, is the ability to ask quality questions. Quality questions, not just throwaway questions, but questions that are well constructed, questions that are purposeful, questions that solidify relationships or that build bonds of trust, and questions that create value in an instant. The kinds of questions where when you ask them, people pause, they reflect, and they say things like, wow, that's a really good question. This is a word cloud. It is not new. This is from when the first edition came out in 2013. These are the responses of buyers who hear quality questions. And the research more recently bears this out. If anything, it amplifies these reactions. Buyers genuinely appreciate it when sellers ask them quality questions, and these are the ways that they respond. So what that means is that you want to ask quality questions because they're going to help you steer the conversation. They put you in the driver's seat. They're going to give you an opportunity to signal your clear purpose so your buyer, the passenger, can relax and be a part of the journey with you. Quality questions, well, they obviously bring back information that you need and that your buyer needs to think through. They're going to create that value, high value, in an instant, both for you and for the buyer. Quality questions, they accelerate. between here where you are and where you want to be because they're so efficient, they're so effective, and they give you this two-way dialogue that also creates value and builds bonds of trust. Last but not least, quality questions. They give the buyer an experience, the kind of experience that they're expecting because of what's going on over in the rest of the world when they are consumers. A buyer experience really matters. They want no less from you. Quality questions. Unlock all of it. As you're waiting for the 10th anniversary edition of Discover Questions to be released in September, I encourage you to check out People First Leadership Academy. That URL is on screen. The Academy is where we're teaching at no cost the backbone skills of critical thinking and of building two-way trust. So be sure and check that out. Again, Subhanjan, thank you for what you're doing here. I look forward to seeing all the other speakers. I've already learned a lot this morning and appreciate the work that you're doing here.
That was a great session from Deb. And the questions is a very key component of sales. And all of us who try to practice it, they know that if there is any way to discover the actual pain points that our customers are facing, questions are the key. In fact, today, Peter Cohen will be there, which will be, and he's going to talk about his book on doing discovery. And I think that's very important. And I was very keen that both Deb and Peter came in and spoke about these two books, because I think that's a very, very critical component of sales. I hope you're enjoying the session so far. I know we are doing a bit of glitches here and there, but as I said, we are learning. We will be back. This session is over, so we'll be back in a couple of minutes with Stu Heineck. You don't want to miss that.